guys are not gonna believe this. Look at this. Look at that. None of this is even bolted on. Welcome back to the channel, guys. We are back to work on the Ducati 848. And we are starting off funky, man. Look at this. Wasn't even bolted down. Only thing holding it together was this seat and 2 screws for the main seat. Man, someone must have had this thing completely torn apart. Looks like the data connector plug is unplugged and the wires for the taillight are plugged in, but there is that broken wire there that I'm not sure what that's for. Anyway, we're removing this whole thing and then we're moving on to the gas tank. This says tail light on this plug here, but we just saw that this is for the data connector. This plug runs up to the data connector port in the rear of the tail here, and this piece can only plug into the tail light? Bruh. Oh no, that is not a good sign at all. No bolt on the coil pack. Oh no. Let's remove that spark plug, see what's down there. There's some form of gray substance on the top of this spark plug. First, when I saw this spark plug, I thought it was broken, but maybe that's just how they are. You can barely see the top of the piston from the coil pack hole, and the coil pack didn't even have the bolt in it. Come on, man, you gotta put the bolt back. If someone's been in there, that means there's usually a problem, so let's keep diving in, taking off the rest of the pieces on top of this engine. I think it may need an engine rebuild. Sucker's brand new. so good. I don't see anything too crazy. The valves are intact, just a ton of carbon buildup. We did get the airbox off. It was pretty difficult to get off because the throttle cables run directly to the bottom and I didn't want to unbolt the throttle bodies. And then thank you, Ducati, you used the nice hose clamps for the actual throttle bodies. Makes removal really easy. It is extremely dirty down here. I'm doubting they went this deep because all the bolts are still there. Lol. This is seriously such a strange place for a coolant reservoir to me. Like, I've never even thought about this being an option. You think it would just get extremely hot in that position. One thing I did notice way down in the bottom is the coolant hose is extremely corroded down there. But now I want to remove the casing around the belt cover because maybe the damage occurred here, causing the timing to be off, and that's our engine issue. That's just my guess, but now let's get to removing those covers, see what the damage is. All right, so I just got off the phone with my buddy Santiago. We ran through a bunch of different things on the bike. He let me know all about the timing on these belts. He let me know how to adjust them, how to take off the belts, how to take off the tensioners for the belts. And I showed him around the bike. I showed him these cylinder heads. He said I could pop off this cover, make sure there wasn't a lot of damage underneath here. And he said it was pretty funky that these coil packs were completely out, like I showed you guys earlier, and that spark plug was barely twisted in there. So originally he said to turn over the motor. He was like, bro, you're gonna wanna turn over the motor, make sure that it's good and nothing's damaged internally. And we were gonna turn it over on this, but I don't have any sort of tool to turn it over from here. So what he said to do was to put the bike in 6th gear and turn the rear wheel, which will turn over the motor and give me some leverage. Now my Ducati stand over there does not fit on the rear axle on this 2010 848 because the axle is a different diameter than my 2014 1199 that stand is for. We found a piece of rebar in the yard, put it through the axle, and this was actually Santiago's idea, smart guy. And then we put a stand on it, so now we have access to this wheel, and we did just put it in 6th gear, so let's try turning this thing. All right, she's in 6th gear. Oh gosh, I can hear the exhaust. I can hear the exhaust valve moving, and it is spinning. Check this out. It's really tight though. It is moving, which is a super good sign, but I can't get it to fully turn over. It's really hard to turn from the rear wheel. Maybe that top dead center is just really hard, but the valves look pretty good. They're both open right now. You can see a little bit of gap above the valve. I'm gonna turn the engine over and you guys can watch the valves. Tough. So that valve and piston movement in there really confuses me because I have no idea what I'm looking for, but I just FaceTimed Santiago. We talked about it. Since he owns one of these, he said to take off this top cover, make sure all the closer shims and everything is working properly. So that's exactly what we're gonna do. See what we find. Can't get this front wheel to turn all the way over to where the main pulley is at top dead center. So this mark on here is supposed to be in line with the edge on this case, is what Santiago was saying. And when I spin the rear wheel, I can't get this mark to come here. It stops early. So we think this is way out of time. So now the next plan of action is to retime the bike right away. So what I'm gonna do is have to take off the belts and then adjust the cams, put the belts back on. And like you can see from these photos that Santiago sent over, that's where his cams were when he timed it properly. So I need to make sure these lines are right about here. And then this dot on this lower cam is right about here. And then on the horizontal head, this line was almost dead on straight. And this little dot was dead straight on the bottom. But the main thing is getting the main crank to line up with TDC, which is on the case right there. So if any of that made sense, the summary is we're gonna take off the belts, retime the bike, make sure everything is in TDC, top dead center, and go from there. Oh, and one last thing, the tensioner is this piece right here, so we gotta loosen this to pull the belts off. So we just called up Santiago and we turned over the engine, rotating the rear wheel forwards, and the engine completely stopped turning over at about halfway from TDC. Like the rear wheel not move forwards anymore. It's completely stuck going forwards, so I think a piston or valve might be touching, so we gotta readjust. I'm gonna loosen the tensioners, remove these cam belts, and reposition the teeth. So I just took a photo of the cams over here previously, and I sent it to Santiago, and he said that they were off a tooth in this direction. So we moved the top one tooth over. It was originally here, now it's here, and we moved this tooth from here to here. So simply just rotating the cams one turn backwards on both of them, with the main pulley being at top dead center, right there with the mark. And we just spun the motor over and it spins freely all the way until TDC, when it kind of binds up a little bit, but it feels like a lot of pressure, because if I hold the rear wheel against it, it releases that pressure and then spins over again, and then gets tight at TDC and does the same thing over again. It definitely is strange explaining, since I've never dealt with this before. But now I'm looking to see if this thing will even crank without any gas or anything. I just want to see if this cranks and moves everything over, turns it over correctly. We did verify that the timing is correct because it does turn over and doesn't hit anything. And we know that because previously I had this incorrect and it was actually clicking. That piston and the valve was actually touching, but we had to adjust it one tooth back like you guys saw. So yeah, we're gonna crank this thing, see how these belts move. Obviously we have to throw the valve cover back on because of the oil galleries on the camshaft. We don't want that spraying everywhere. And you guys said these are some aftermarket keys, so let's see if that even works with the immobilizer. Whenever I press the crank button, this fuse clicks. I'm gonna press it now. And then in about 10 seconds, it will click again. I'm not touching anything. So we tried to crank it over, but it's just clicking a relay. Whenever I turn the key on and press this button, it clicks this relay right here, and it's a little bit warm. So now we're just gonna go through the fuses, make sure all the electrical is good. I will catch up with you guys in a minute. Well, still no success with starting the 848. We even changed out that weird 30 amp with a bunch of wire around it that was blown. It looks like it was blown and then pieces of metal were shoved up the underside so it would continue to work. So we replaced that. It's not blown. I just turned the key and nothing's happening. It's still clicking from this fuse relay right here. I'm not sure why that is. Also, the red light is blinking there. I'm not sure what that means, but I think that immobilizer is gonna stop me on that one. Unfortunately, that's where we're gonna have to end this video. Big shout out to Santiago. He was a huge help. Man, I'm eager to ride this thing. We'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.